እንግዶቻችን እንደምን ሰንብታችኋል እንግዲህ ባለፈው ሳምንት እንደጀመርነው በዚህ ሳምንት የምንቀጥልላችሁ empower the community weekend የሚባለው ትልቁ ዝግጅታችን እዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ ጁላይ 27 ሞቅ ደመቅ ብሎ ውሎ ነበር እና ከዚህ ቀን ላይ እንደው ፓወር ፓነል የምንላቸውን ሃይላይት የምናደርግባቸውን ፓነል ዲስከሽን በዚህ ሳምንትና በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት ደግሞ የመጨረሻውን ይዘንላችሁ እንቀርባለን ማለት ነው የዚህ ሳምንት ፓወር ፓነል ደግሞ ቢዝነስ ኤንድ ሊደርሺፕ የሚባል ዳይናሚክ የሆኑ ትልልቅ ስራ የሚሰሩ እዚህ ሀገር ኢትዮጵያውያኖችና ኤርትራን አሜሪካኖችን ጋብዘንላችሁ ነበር ከሱ ዝግጅት ላይ ነው ደግሞ ቆይታ የምናደርገው እነዚህን እንግዶቻችንን የሚያስተዋውቅልን Ovid Real Estate our platinum sponsor CEO አቶ ፍሬው በየነ እዚህ ሀገር ነበር ለዚህ ዝግጅት እስቲ ወደሱ ልሰዳችሁና እንግዶቻችንን ያስተዋውቅልን
Thank you so much Helen invite ስላደረጋችሁን እኛንም ደስ ብሎናል ክቡራትና ክቡራን ሰላም ለእናንተ ይሁን ፍሬው ባላለው የኦቪድ ሪል ስቴት ዋና ስራ አስፈጻሚ ነኝ ከኢትዮጵያ ድረስ የመጣ ነው empower the community weekend join ለማድረግ ነው በጣም ደስ ብሎናል ደስ የሚል ሐሳብ ነው ብዙዎችን የሚያሰባስብ ብዙዎችን አንድ የሚያደርግ ሐሳብ ነውና በዚህ አጋጣሚ empower the community ያዘጋጁትን ሰዎች በሙሉ በጣም አክብሮት እንዳለኝ ለገልጽ እወዳለሁ ከዛ ባለፈ በተለይ ደግሞ የዚህ ሐሳብ ተንሳሽና አዘጋጅ ሄለንን አስኪ join me to appreciate please thank you Helen ስለ ኦቪድ ትንሽ ልበል ኦቪድ ማን ነው ኦቪድ ምንድነው የሚለውን ለመግለጽ ነው የሀገር ልማት የሀገር ፍቅር ያነገቡት ታላቁ መሪያችን አቶ ዮናስ ታደሰ የኦቪድ ዋና ስራ አስፈጻሚ ከዛሬ 11 አመት በፊት ኦቪድ ግሩፕን መሰረቱ ኦቪድ የሚለው ቃል አክሮኒም ነው our vision is development ወይም ራያችን ልማት ነው የሚል ቃል ላይ የመጀመሪያ ፊደሎች የተወሰደ ነው ኦቪድ ማለት OVID our vision is development ማለት ነው የተመሰረተበት ዋና ዓላማው በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ያለው ትልቁ አሳሳቢ የሆነው የቤት ችግርን ለመፍታት ነው ራያችን ልማት ነው ስንል የእውነት የመኖሪያ ቤት ችግርን ከስር መሰረቱ ለመፍታት አቅደና የመጣ ነው የኮንስትራክሽን ኢንዱስትሪው ላይ የተለያዩ ቴክኖሎጂዎችን በማስተዋወቅ በተለይ ኮንስትራክሽን ላይ ያሉትን ጋፖች ለመሙላት ነው አስበን እየሰራን እንገኛው ከነዚህም ውስጥ ኬስፓን ቴክኖሎጂ በአጭር ጊዜ ውስጥ ሼዶችን በአጭር ጊዜ ውስጥ መስራት የሚያስችል ቴክኖሎጂን አስተዋውቀናል ከዛ ባለፈ ላይት ኬጅ ስቲል እንዲሁም አሉሚኒየም ፎርምወርክ በዚህ ሰዓት አሁን እየተጠቀምንበት ያለ ቴክኖሎጂ ነው ይሄ አሉሚኒየም ፎርምወርክን በመጠቀም ህንጻዎችን በቀናት ማለትም በ69 ቀን በ89 ቀን በ90 ቀን በቀናት ደረጃ ህንጻን ያልኩት ቤቶች አይደለም ህንጻዎችን G+12 G+13 ህንጻዎችን በቀናት ውስጥ ዴሊቨር ማድረግ የሚያስችል ቴክኖሎጂን ኢንትሮዲዩስ አድርገናል ለኢትዮጵያ በዛም ብዙ ፕሮጀክቶችን ሰርተናል የመጀመሪያውና ትልቁ ፕሮጀክታችን ገርጂ ፕሮጀክት ነው 500 ቤቶችን 500 ትልልቅ ቤቶችን በ18 ወር ውስጥ በጣም ባጭር ጊዜ ማለት ነው ጥራቱን በጠበቀ ሁኔታ ዴሊቨር አድርገናል ከዚህ ባለፈ ትልቁ እንደምታወቀው በግንባታ ወቅት ትልቁ ማነቆ የግንባታ ግብአት ነው የዚህ የግንባታ ግብአትን ችግር ለመፍታት በጣም ትልቅ ስራ ሰርተናል ወደ 24 ኩባንያዎችን አስተዋውቀናል ወይም ከፍተናል በኦቪድ ግሩፕ ስር የሚሰሩ 24 ኩባንያዎች አሉን እነዚህ 24 ኩባንያዎች ዋና ስራቸው ለዋናው ለኮንስትራክሽን እና ለኦቪድ ሪል ስቴት ግብአትን ማቅረብ ነው የሚሆነው በዚህም በጣም ባጠረ ጊዜ ውስጥ ፕሮጀክቶችን ዴሊቨር እያደረግን ነው ኮስት ላይ በጣም ስለምንሰራ ዋጋዎችን በጣም በቅናሽ ዋጋ ቤቶችን ዴሊቨር ለማድረግ እየሰራ እንገኛለን ከዛ ባለፈ ደግሞ ጥራትን የጠበቀ እንዲሆን አድርገውልናል ማለት ነው ኦቪድ ሪል ስቴት በአሁኑ ሰዓት የተለያዩ ቦታዎች ላይ ሜን የሚባሉ ቦታዎች ላይ ቤቶችን እየሰራ እያስረከበ ይገኛል እየሰራን ካለንባቸው ትልልቅ ፕሮጀክቶች መሃል በጥቂቱ ለመግለጽ የመጀመሪያው ጥይት ቤትን ወይም 4 ኪሎ አካባቢ ጫካ ፕሮጀክቶች ላይ ትልልቅ ስራዎችን እየሰራን እንገኛለን ወደ 4000 ቤቶች እየሰራን ነው ከዛ ባለፈ በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ወይም በአዲስ አበባ ከተማ ውስጥ ሌላ ትልቅ ከተማ እየገነባን ነው ኦሬዲ ስራውን ጀምረናል 60000 ቤት የሚይዝ ከተማ እየገነባን ነው ይሄ 60000 ቤት የሚይዝ ከተማ ስንገነባ ወደ 300000 ሰዎችን ማስተናገድ የሚችል ወይም ሊኖርበት የሚችል ትልቅ ከተማ ነው የምንገነባው ይሄ ከተማ ተገንብቶ ሲጠናቀቅ ወይም በክላይማክሱ ላይ ሲደርስ ወደ 270,000 የሚደርሱ ሰራተኞች የሥራ ዕድል ይፈጥራል ለኢትዮጵያውያን ማለት ነው ለኢትዮጵያውያን የምንሰራው ስንል ለዚህ ነው ከዛ ባለፈ ፕሮጀክቱ የዩኤን ሃቢታት ያስቀመጣቸው 2016 ላይ ያስቀመጣቸው ስታንዳርዶችን ያማከለ የትኛውም ሰው ሲኖር ለመኖር ምቹ የሚያደርጉለትን ነገሮች በሙሉ የያዘ ፕሮጀክት ነው። ይሄንን እያደረግን ብዙ ስራዎችን እንሰራለን። እንደ ኦቪድ ማህበራዊ ኃላፊነትን ከመወጣት አንፃር በየፕሮጀክቶቻችን ቤቶችን በነፃ እየሰራን እንሰጣለን። ከዛ ባለፈ ለ2000 እናቶች የሚሆን ትልቅ ፕሮጀክት ሰርተናል። እንጀራን በፋብሪካ ደረጃ ማለት ነው በቀን ወደ 288,000 እንጀራ ማምረት የሚችል ፋብሪካ ሰርተን በነፃ ለማህበረሰባችን ሰጥተናል። የተለያዩ ስራዎችን እየሰራን እንገኛለን። እንደማጠቃለያ እንግዲህ ዛሬ እዚህ የተገኘሁበት ዋናው ዓላማ ኦቪድ ሪልስቴትን ወክዬ ኑ አብረን ኢትዮጵያን እንገንባ ለማለት ነው። በእርግጠኝነት በእንደዚህ ዋጋ ሰምታችሁ የምታውቁ አይመስለኝም። መድገም ያለብኝ ይመስለኛል። እሺ ስቱዲዮ 1.2 ሚሊዮን ብር፣ ባለ 1 መኝታ 2.4 ሚሊዮን ብር፣ ባለ 2 መኝታ 4.1 ሚሊዮን ብር፣ ባለ 3 መኝታ ደግሞ 5.4 ሚሊዮን ብር ነው። ብዙዎችን መግቢያው ጋር ነው። ብትመጡ ብዙ ጥያቄዎች እንዳሏችሁ አምናለሁኝ። ጥያቄዎቻችሁን ለመመለስ ዝግጁ ነን። ከዛ ባለፈ ዛሬ ትላንት ማስታወቂያ ላይ እንደሰማችሁት $1,000 ዲፖዚት ለሚያደርግ ሰው እጣ ውስጥ ይገባል። ያ እጣ ምንድነው? ልክ ኢምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ፕሮግራም ሲያልቅ እጣውን እናወጣለን። እዚሁ ስቴጅ ላይ እጣውን እናወጣለን። እጣው ወጥቶ አንድ ሰው የቤት ባለቤት እድለኛ ይሆናል ማለት ነው በነፃ። ስለዚህ ጆይን አስ። ብዙ ጋር ነው የምንገኘው፣ እንዳትቀሩ ጆይን አድርጉን ላለሁኝ። ቴንክ ዩ።
አስተዋውቅልናለህ እንግዲህ በ1,000 ብር ቤት ገዝታችሁ ልትገቡ ይሆናል ማለት ነው እድል ከደረሰ
በዚሁ አጋጣሚ የቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ ፓናል ዲስከሽኑን የሚሳተፉልንን ሰዎች ኢንቫይት አደርጋለሁኝ። ምናሴ ታደሰ ኤምቢኤ ግሎባል ባዮፋርማ ኤክስፐርት ኮርፖሬት ቦርድ ዳይሬክተር ኤንድ ሊደር። በመቀጠል ሚኒሊክ ሰለሞን ፕሬዚዳንት ጂኢ ሆንዳ ኤሮ ኢንጂንስ ኤልኤልሲ። አና ጌታነህ ፋውንደር ኤንድ ክሪኤቲቭ ዳይሬክተር አፍሪካን ሞዛይክ። አብይ የሽጥላ board member, digital transformation, business expansion, and new market entry. Thank you. I think have a good time. Helen, Lanchila Circle.
Thank you. አመሰግናለሁ ፍሬው። Oh wow. Okay. Thank you በጣም. Are you ready for this? አንድ ጊዜ round of applause to all of our speakers here. So there is a reason why we're going to do this conversation in English. It's not because we don't love and appreciate our language, but we have a lot of second-generation young people in this audience. We want to make sure they're able to participate. They want to listen to this. This is going to air on ABS television, and we're also going to upload it on YouTube. So we want to make sure anyone and everyone can hear this important discussion that we're going to have. I am really honored and thrilled to have all of you. Although, as you can see, we have very hardcore corporate executives on the stage, but then we have also the one and only Ana Getane. Leadership comes in many ways, in many shapes and many forms, and so we want to make sure whoever is, when we're growing in our career, whatever trajectory that is on, that we have to live our passion and we have to live what we believe in, and that comes in many ways. So thank you everyone for taking your time and coming from everywhere to join us today. The first question, and I am going to make sure that Robert takes care of our mics, is let's get to know you, okay? Can you share your journey and then also some key milestones that led you to your current position? Manasi, I'm going to start with you and then we're going to work our way down.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Helen, for having us, and it's great to be with everybody. In brief, my name is Manase Mamo Tadessa. I actually grew up here. I came at the age of 11. The most memorable moments for me have always been at home with my parents, with my mother, with my siblings, some of whom are here. And so we came to the United States and they said learn English and go to school. And that's exactly what I did. My parents were an 8th grade graduate mother, a 12th grade graduate father. So when you talk about what do you study at school and the sort of wisdom we impart upon our kids at this point, it was just literally just a blank, black hole that we were trying to find our way. But the thing to me that has allowed me to be able to have some level of success, if I put it that way, in trying to impart a little bit of wisdom, is this, what I call this Ethiopian African sort of resilience. My mother used to always say, and she told me one story and I'll leave it with you, there's a thing called a mafakia. And so a few times in my life when I said, Abu, her name was Abubech, you know, I'm struggling. She told a story once of if you broke your arm when she was growing up, they would put a mafaka in your mouth, they would say bite down, and somebody would put the bone back together. Okay? So every time you had something, every time I said, Mom, I'm struggling in school or whatever it is, it was, remember the mafaka story, and in many different ways. I'm not telling it to you the way she would tell it to you, but that was all about perseverance and resilience. And so for the number of years that I spent in corporate America, it's been nothing but a struggle and perseverance, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But I had great examples like my older brother, great example like my family, but that story of persistence, resilience, to me is one of the most important things that we have to do. Life is not easy, but if you put some effort behind it, I think you can make it.
That's great. Menelik?
Helen, thank you so much for having me here. It's so great to be in this beautiful city. I really, really appreciate what you do to the community. So thank you. And I really want to appreciate being here with the panel members, the audience that you have, as well as my family members that are here to be with me. My name is Menelik Solomon. I'm the president of GA Honda Air Engines. I relate a lot to what the gentleman here said. Definitely my Ethiopianness, my identity, my resilience is really where I got my success in life. But more importantly, it's also patience and having a vision or where I'm trying to be in the future. So having that clear vision and being laser focused to achieve that goal. I look forward to a very productive discussion. And again, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Anna? Very different journey from most everyone here.
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna Gitana. I wear two hats. I lead two organizations. The first one is called Ethiopian Children's Fund, which is registered in Ethiopia as the ECF Children's Fund. It's a non-profit organization that caters for children in rural Ethiopia. And we are celebrating, starting this coming September, our 25th anniversary. So hopefully I'll have more to say about that. But it's a huge milestone, and the journey has been very long, but it has been one of the best things that I've done in my life. And yeah, so that's the first hat I wear. The second one is I run a fashion company called African Mosaic, which has its origin here in the US. It was initially registered as a cultural initiative to promote African fashion in the West. And when I moved to the continent, when I moved to South Africa and then ultimately to Ethiopia, I registered the company as a commercial company, as a PLC, which enabled me to build a sustainable fashion company that focuses on three elements: sourcing, designing, and developing talent in Africa. So today I'm firmly based in Ethiopia. I get the opportunity to travel and come to Washington in the US where my children reside, Washington where I also have extended family, and also travel the world and also find opportunities and platforms where I can share the work that we're doing. I want to thank Helen for inviting me to be part of this very important platform and this important event, and I wanted to congratulate you on a wonderful and successful 8th-year anniversary. It's not easy to do it for 1 year or 2 years, but 8 years, so congratulations to you as well, and look forward to having this discussion today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Avi?
Hey, thank you, Helen. And it's good to be here. First and foremost, it's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this panel, because I'm going to learn a lot from the panel as well. So my name is Abi Yeshitla. I came to US in 1981. And I came to US, and my first job was a dishwasher. I was washing dishes while I was going to college. And then I got promoted to a busboy and a waiter. And I tell you, the reason why I'm mentioning that is that job allowed me to learn more about how to deal with people, how to work with people, how to interact with people. And fast forward, I got my master's degree from RPI in 1987. Another milestone that I like to share is the commencement address at that time was given by the CEO of IBM. And that resonated incredibly well with me because he talked about hard work, innovation, IBM's commitment to diversity, and also respect for individuals. So that put me in a position where I need to apply for IBM and start working for IBM. But guess what? I applied and I got rejected. I applied again, and I got rejected. And the reason is because way back in my career, I was told that persistency pays off finally, right? So third time I applied and I got the job. So I stayed with IBM. So the point I like to make here is being persistent, and there is no substitute to hard work. So I'm here today. I work for Oracle, and now I'm involved with startups.
That's wonderful. So the reason why I feel this is important conversation to have in this way, and to have people like, Manasseh and Mel and Anna and Abi here, is because we know representation matters. Our children look up. Most of us live here, and we also have obviously all over the place. So in corporate spaces, in these decision maker spaces, if we are not really represented, we can't really make the changes that we want to make. And the second generation, our children are not going to be able to have somebody that they look up to. So it's really important to have them on this stage, to be able for them to share their experiences. And some of the questions that I have here are not necessarily the conversations that you have in corporate spaces and other conferences and all these meetings that you go to, but they are important and relevant to us. So that's why I'm going to ask a lot of these questions as an immigrant, and I say it as a minority, because this is who we are and this is how we're going to move in this world.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። ቢዝነስ ኤንድ ሊደርሺፕ የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደ ፕሮግራሙ ልሰዳችሁ።
So can you discuss a time when you felt your contributions were undervalued or overlooked because of the perception of your background? Sometimes we all have accents, right? Sometimes people, I tell people, when people hear me talk and I have an accent, so sometimes they think your brain also has an accent, which is not true, right? We know that's not it is. So I want to know, how do you handle that? How do you handle being overlooked? Or how do you handle the perception that people have, okay, listen, he is a minority or he's an immigrant, so maybe this is not the place for you to be. So Manasseh, let me start with you.
So look, this is exactly what I talk about. I spent 24 years at a company called Pfizer that all of you would know. I ran their emerging markets business. I was part of the Senior Leadership Council, which is top 250 people at the company. I went on to a spin-off from Pfizer, where I was the top 12 in a company running a $3 billion business. You say, what happened? What challenges did you face? You face challenges all the time. The reality is, the notion, as black people, as Africans, as African Americans, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far, absolutely is the case. Make no mistake about it, okay? The thing that we cannot do, all right? The thing that we cannot do is be naive about the way the system works, all right? The system is built that way. But at the end of the day, that Mafaka story that I told you about is my response. I was gonna outwork everybody. I was gonna try to make sure that I would take on the assignments that nobody was willing to take, because that was my opportunity to be able to have a mark. That was my opportunity to be able to hit a home run in places that other people were scared about. So when I tell you about resilience, also you have to be able to bet on yourself and have the courage to take the steps that are necessary, right? I'm going to be in no different position given who I am, and nobody's giving me any advantages. Helen, I used to tell people all the time, if I sounded like James Bond, right, a British accent, everybody would love me, but I don't, right? But I've seen plenty of people that sound like James Bond that have no value to add come and be taken to places that I wasn't taken. But I forced myself to get there, right? Through persistence, through a work ethic, through understanding that the system is what it is. I can complain and say it's not fair, or I can continue to try to break down the doors, and that's exactly what I did, because that courage, that resilience, that sort of upbringing that we have, you got to keep going. And that may not be a satisfactory answer, but so long as the system is the way it is, we got to keep pushing, and there's no backing down.
That's true. Menelik, how do you overcome being undervalued and overlooked?
Absolutely. So, you definitely have to be working as hard. I think Manasseh was very generous. He said twice as hard. I would say 10 times as hard. It depends. Some instances it could be twice as hard. But at the end of the day, your work needs to be valued. And the way I normally would go about it, and there are different tools to make sure that people understand your contribution. One of the ways to do that is to set specific goals and to use a tool, and the tool that I'll normally use is a tool called SMART. It stands for S-M-A-R-T. The S stands for specific, M is measurable, A is actionable, R is relevant, and T is timely. So you need to be, when you're given a project, when you're given an assignment, when you're given something to do, you need to make sure that you understand what the expectation is, and make sure that the people that are giving you those assignments are also understanding of that. So you got to make sure that it's very clear, very specific on what you need to do. It needs to be measurable so that it doesn't go on for ages and nobody understands what you're trying to accomplish. It needs to be actionable. So it needs to be something that you can do and show that you took the full accountability for the work. It needs to be relevant as well. If it's not relevant to you, you're probably not going to spend a lot of time doing it anyway. It needs to be relevant to the company. And most importantly, it needs to be timely. It needs to be time measured. Once you set that expectation and it preferably it's properly documented that that's what you're going to do, at the end of the day, once your job is done, the organization has no option but to value what you did. Right? There's no dispute, and there's no alternative. And that would allow a properly documented ethics, hard work that you've put in that project to allow you to grow in the organization. And there won't be any other alternative option but to recognize the value that you bring into the organization. And you can apply that in your personal life as well. Thank you.
Anna, if you can answer that question from a company, like you have a business, and keeping it viable based in Africa, and the kind of work that you do, also that, is there a perception when you're running a company? As a former model, maybe the challenge could be, do people take you seriously? You know, what I bring to the table, are people valuing that? Do you have some challenges in that perspective?
Yes, absolutely. When I started off, as you were saying, you know, my background, A, as a female, number two, as someone whose background was working as a fashion model, and then promoting something like fashion, which is, you know, definitely then and maybe a little bit less now, but it's still the case. It's not really an industry that's taken very, very seriously. And then you add on top of that my focus is really on promoting African fashion, which was like not even on the radar 20 years ago. So I had a lot of proving to do, and I had to really make sure that along the way that I was always ahead of the game and that I was, you know, evolving myself and understanding what the challenges are, because I knew the journey was long, and I knew that I had to really prove myself when I was living in America, trying to promote the work that we're doing here and trying to change the mindset here, and then moving to Africa and then realizing that you have a similar mindset, but from the other context, but can we produce great fashion in Africa? Can we produce, you know, company that's going to be promoting our culture in fashion? So the challenges have always been there. I think there has been a lot of progress in the last decade, I would say, because of communication, globalization, the focus on Africa these days. So it's a little bit better, but still trying to promote work that you're based in Africa, promoting products that are sourced and designed and made in Africa. And having the background that I did, you know, obviously I have a degree in marketing. I've done this in my school, but I still am associated with the former model thing. So it's sort of like, can you really do it? But then 5 years back, I'm still doing it. 10 years later, I'm still doing it. And then now 20 plus years, I'm still doing it. So obviously you have to do the hard work. You have to show that you're committed. It's not going to be an easy journey. And then hopefully you start winning over, you know, the support, which we have now, and also the respect that you need. But you've got to do the hard work, and you've got to do it yourself. You've got to live it yourself. You've got to experience it. You've got to make sure that you're authentic to what you're saying, and you're not just sort of running it remotely, but you've got to be on the ground. And then you're able to answer most of the questions, and then people start believing you, and then they start joining you on your journey. So pretty much that's been my journey so far.
Okay. Abi, I'm going to ask you a different question. Do you think minorities and immigrants bring different perspective to leadership in corporate space?
100%. 100%. So the journey we took as minority or even as an immigrant speaks volume, because we took risk, courage, determination, audacity, and really fortitude. Those are the attributes that are highly required to be a leader, to be an effective leader. So by definition, the journey we took to get where we are speaks volume, because especially the courage. There's actually one of my favorite authors is Brené Brown. She wrote a book about courage and risk. And that's exactly what we did in order to get where we are. And that puts us really in an unfair advantage to run an organization. And that helped me a lot personally as well.
So as diaspora, you were told, Manasseh, you said it earlier, you have to go to school, you gotta make sure you choose a certain career path that's gonna guarantee you success. Stay under the radar, don't make too much noise, just do what you gotta do, right? But you have to be a risk taker in order to grow, in order to take advantage of opportunities. Sometimes these risks are going to be great rewards, other times not so much, right? So would you consider yourself a risk taker?
Absolutely.
And tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'll give you some examples. This is a perfect question for me. This is what I'm talking about. I used to hate it when people give abstract sort of advice. Be strong, be this, be that. So I told you, be courageous. What does that mean according to me? According to me, that meant lots of inflection points upon my career. We need to do something. We need somebody to volunteer. You've got 48 hours over the weekend. My wife will attest to this. For something to be done where we're going to have to report it out to Wall Street that Monday. I'm the one raising my hand. We were talking with Anna and Abi. We spent some time in South Africa. There was a South Africa affiliate that was just in horrible shape. They said, who wants that job? I'm raising my hand, all right? Why is that? I know I'm not going to get the jobs that are available to the James Bond sounding or the European or the German or the Swiss. The German works like a machine. The Swiss is like a Swiss clock. The Ethiopian is nothing according to that, and he's got a weird name to begin with. I don't care, all right? So my definition of courage, especially to you young kids, my definition of courage is there were two people that were alive whose opinion mattered to me. That was my mom and my dad, all right? My only people that matter to me today are my three kids if I disappoint them. Everybody else, I take your input. But my cup is full with me and my perspective. My character doesn't change. I don't need anybody to be able to help me add anything. Constructive feedback, I'm good. The people I didn't want to disappoint were the two people that have passed away. Now I've got three kids that I brought into this world. I value their opinion. But everybody else's opinion is perfectly fine. If it's constructive, I'm taking it. If it's not, keep it to yourself, right? If you don't have that mentality, right, corporate America will chew you up and spit you out. But then you've got to be able to have this courage to take the risk upon yourself. Don't ask somebody to be able to bet on you if you're not willing to bet on yourself. So to me, that's my definition. So I don't want to leave an abstract word. I want to break it down for you in the way I think about it.
That's amazing, yeah. What would you like to add? That's great. Are you a risk taker?
I am definitely a risk taker because, maybe I'll start from the abstract first and then give specific examples. So humanity only advances by people who take risks. If people don't take risks, nothing changes, right? So beyond just your identity, if you are to make a difference, you have to be a risk taker. Now, don't take any risks that are foolish. So you need to take what I consider to be calculated risks. And you need to think about a risk as a function of the severity, meaning what could go wrong? How bad could it get? The probability, right? What is the likelihood of that thing happening? And your exposure, right? How long are you exposed or under that risk? I'll give you maybe a simpler example. Let's say you have a car that's about 10 years old, and that annoying yellow check engine light comes on. Now you have to decide, you're at home, you have to decide what to do. You can take a risk of taking that car an hour away to a really good mechanic to fix it, or you can take it to the local garage, which is 10 minutes away. The local garage may not fix it, so now you have to make a calculated risk. So you need to look at how bad could it get? Could I get stranded on the highway? Or would I take a smaller risk and go to the local mechanic and get it fixed and be able to get on with life? So when you think about the risks that you take back in the corporate world, there is a lot of risks that you have to take to enable you to move up in the echelon. Some of them with hard work, will be rewarding. Some you'll have to learn to not take. And you need to balance that based on the things that I just talked about. How badly do you want it? And what could go wrong? What is the likelihood of you succeeding taking that risk? And then what's your exposure in that risk? And that's how I look at my life, and that's how I manage my life as well.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። ቢዝነስ ኤንድ ሊደርሺፕ የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደ ፕሮግራሙ ልሰዳችሁ።
And I have to think you are a risk taker to do what you do in Ethiopia consistently. So how do you look at risk and how do you balance that?
So gosh, I've been a risk taker from day one. Well, I would say day one as an adult. I think when I bought my first one-way ticket from Brussels to Paris, we were living in Brussels with my family. I bought a one-way ticket and I said I'm going to become a model. I had no idea, I had no signed contract. I just knew that that it was time for me to leave home. And prior to that, I was a good girl. I was kind of I never rebelled. I was a good girl, but I never really knew what I was going to do with my life at that time. But I just knew I had to take a big, major step. And if I didn't take that step, I wasn't going to discover anything. So. Obviously I just didn't land there. I had done a little bit of modeling prior to that in Brussels, and some weekends I snuck away to Paris to see the industry, but I finally decided that I was going to go to Paris and try my luck. And I think, obviously I took other risks after that, and then from Paris, which was the big fashion market at that time, and Milano and everything based in Europe, I really felt now I need to come to America. After having spent the first year and a half, I felt the opportunities were bigger for someone like me in America, whereas in Europe it was still very early on. The opportunities weren't that great, but it was sort of seasonal. So, you'd be good for one season, but you're not sure if you're going to be around, So I had to really make the big move to come to New York because I felt New York City was really where all the opportunities were for a black model, for working at that time. So that gave me the confidence that I knew that I had to continue taking risks to really achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve. So very early on, I wanted to really come back to Ethiopia and do things, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to do it. My family was living in America. I was born and raised primarily outside Ethiopia. I had only lived in Ethiopia for 3 years, between 8 and 12. But I had this urge inside of me that I had to go back to Ethiopia and do something. So I bought my ticket, went to Ethiopia. I was staying with my grandmother, my late grandmother, who was in Ethiopia, who took care of me during my first few trips to Ethiopia. And I said, I'm going to venture in, I'm going to start a school. My grandmother was worried, like, school, but did you study how to be a teacher? How are you going to open a school? But, it was sort of like, I had this urge within me, and I said, I want to open a school, and it's going to come together somehow. So obviously the risks that I was taking early on in my career were very big risks, at times maybe more driven by emotion. But I think, over the years I've become very careful. But, when you want to grow, and innovation comes really out of taking risks. And looking back at the last 25 years of my life, if I didn't take the risk that I did at that time, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't be able to do the things that I enjoy and live in the place where I want to live. So I took risks, but it was always somewhat calculated. I was very, I always kind of weighed out the pros and cons. I would talk to myself a lot about, should I take this move, should I not? I consult my family and friends. And, obviously I always had a plan B and a plan C, and I always thought, okay, if I take this risk and if it doesn't work, what is my fallback? So I always had a big game plan, and whoever would listen to me, I would be like rolling out my plans. So yeah, over the years, I think, especially if you work in the creative industry, there's just so much innovation that comes out of taking risks. And so, my first move to South Africa, I moved as a family, I moved with my husband, we had our first child at that time. It was things that I wanted to do, living in Africa, living in South Africa, which was the biggest economy, and thinking there's no high-end African brand and we're living in South Africa. It just didn't make sense for me at that time. So at that time I thought I had to open a multi-brand African store in Santa. That was it. I had to introduce African fashion on the continent, because here I was when I was living in America, in New York, etc., saying it's fashion, support our own fashion, it's thriving, have our own identity, etc. But then I'm moving to Africa and nobody's really promoting and sustaining that. So that was a big risk I took. It was tricky, and then that led to ultimately moving to Ethiopia and really sort of venturing into manufacturing, which I had never done in my life or even worked in a factory, but I just thought, this is where I need to start from the ground up if I'm going to do it in Ethiopia. So risk has been very much part of my journey. I've made huge mistakes, and sometimes the risks have outweighed the pros, and I had to really start again on certain journeys. But overall, you know, it's exciting when it does come through, and you really value the journey that you've taken, and it's helped you move to the next level. And you think back, like, if I didn't make that move at that moment, I wouldn't be here today. So it's a lot of sort of going back and reflecting and really sort of sharing it with the people that love you and that support you, and they're there to really help you get to the next step.
Great. Are you a risk taker?
I am, and I also like to share a story here. So there is actually a famous saying, growth and comfort, they don't reside under one roof. So in order to step up, in order to really step up in your career, you have to step out of your comfort zone. So I worked for IBM about 27 years. And then at the end of 2018, I got an offer from our competitor. Our competitor in this case is Oracle. And they've asked me to come to the Middle East and run their cloud operation. And I tell you, I say to myself, no, I'm in a comfort zone. I'm fine with IBM. I don't know what Dubai look like, although Manasseh knows what Dubai look like. And I said, I'm not going to take that risk. But I said, you know, if I don't, then there is no growth. You know, the biggest risk that you are taking is not taking one. So if you don't take a risk, that's your biggest risk. So I took that risk, came to Dubai, and I actually had far exceeded my expectation. And I managed the cloud team, as well as really the culture and the people. They were very welcoming, and truly has exceeded my expectations. So risk-taking is clearly has been part of my life all the way, but most importantly, it's one that I would recommend that everyone should seriously do it to improve career. Yeah.
So I guess when you follow, that's great, yeah. The follow-up question to risk is, and I'm going to ask all of you to be a little bit vulnerable with me here, because failure is just as part as success of anyone that has arrived at any level of success. So if you could share with me, and you know, I know Manasseh, you're good at saying don't make it abstract and be real. So I'm going to ask you to be real and tell me what any significant failure or that has happened in your career, in your journey, that you're willing to share with us so we can learn from that. And how did you do to correct that mistake and then move on? So Manasseh, maybe I'll start with you.
Perfect. I can start that. You had another question for us about, you know, how did you do it before and how did you do it now? So for me early on, it literally was about outworking everybody. I was going to be there before everybody and I was going to leave after everybody. But the reality is, especially for those of you that are considering corporate America, I told you, you can work yourself to death. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not having sponsors, if you're not building a network, if you're not understanding the politics of how an organization works, they don't work. Nobody gives you a job, a promotion, just because you deserve it. There's no such thing. This concept of a meritocracy that Americans talk about doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist. I hate to be blunt about that. That's just the reality. That does not mean you cannot build an advocacy, you cannot build a network, you cannot build a roadmap for yourself, all right? So the hard work goes with it. I think you've heard all of us say consistently, all right? The courage and the requirements go with it, but then you've also got to be able to build a kind of a village to be able to go along with you. And this is this African proverb of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go as a whole, with a group, with a collective. All of us need that level of guidance. And for me, that meant, you know, my brother, my friends, my parents, but then not activating that as much in a corporate setting until I got a little bit older. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have done that much earlier in my life.
Menelik, any mistakes you can share?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, you know, life takes you in different places, right? And you know, for me, when I took this position about a year and a half ago, it was right after COVID, and I felt clearly a high level sense of responsibility to make sure that I left behind was eventually was a clean track record. But COVID had a huge impact in our industry, and when I took over, we had significant supply chain related restrictions, and to a point where our operation was pretty much halted for quite a while, and it hit me really hard. And I said, even though I'm not directly involved in supply chain management, I felt this is going to be a failure for me. This is going to be a failure of my leadership. And to the follow-up question that you talked about, what I did was, obviously reset and reorganize the group and be able to use my network to be able to overcome the issues that we have and build a better relationship with the different suppliers that are more in tune to our kind of operation and being able to be responsive to the needs that we have. And today we're in a much better position than we were in the past. So that has been a somehow humiliating experience as well, but also has been rewarding, recognizing that I can actually leverage my network and be able to overcome such a huge challenge.
Good. Anna, any mistakes that you've made, that you've learned from, you can share?
Well, there have been a lot. There have been a few. So maybe I'll narrow in on maybe my experience. So maybe one of the things that I tend to do is I get like overworked up and overexcited about when I'm starting something or I'm moving into. So my move to Ethiopia, when I was planning my move, I had everything ready and lined up. I thought, okay, I know what I'm doing, but there was just so many things that I had piled up for myself, and I was so sure, I was so confident that I can pull it off. And I think, I was like close to burnout my first couple of years in Addis because I just wanted to do so much, and I was like trying to catch up on so many years of getting ready for this big homecoming, and I'm going to get this done, and I'm going to wrap this up in 6 months. In 1 year, I'm going to have this up and running. And so I think, and I did a very similar thing when I was about to start the school. And I do remember, and this was like 25 plus years ago when I was getting ready to start the school, and I told my friends, we had done our fundraising, I'm going to school, I got land, we're going to build a school, we're going to fundraise. I didn't have the land yet, I didn't have the school yet, but I thought, okay, I'm going to start fundraising so that when I finish the fundraising, the school's going to start. And we had everything ready, and I had a few friends who were coming with me to Ethiopia, to kind of help me do the groundbreaking. And then I arrived in Ethiopia and was like, oh, well, the land is not, you're going to have to wait a few months, and that was heartbreaking for me. It was sort of like, so I took all my friends on holiday. We ended up doing a holiday instead of visiting the school. But so I tend to kind of plan, but I get over ambitious, and I sort of overestimate all the things that I can do. And I think I've really learned over the years to kind of pace myself. But I think it's those early years were testing because I wanted to start my own factory. I wanted to manufacture. I wanted to build a perfect team. I wanted to export in 2 years. I wanted to. It was just so many things that everything looked perfect on paper, And I was just, and then obviously, the delays in the construction, hiring people took a while, and building a team, and things at some point were just not coming together. But I've always been really blessed, and I say that everything I do, I have an incredible support system behind me. Just an incredible family, loving friends, sisters, my mom, my family, and my husband, my kids now who are grown up. I mean, everybody has really helped me, really, and sometimes as crazy as my ideas can be, it's just having that support system really helps you. So because you are going to fail in life, so make sure you have a support system that's going to help you pick you up and say continue going. So you will make mistakes, hopefully not big mistakes like some of the mistakes I made, but if you calculate and you take small little steps and not huge steps, then your little mistakes can be easily fixed. But if you're over ambitious and you want to do big things, then sometimes you kind of are off balance, and it's great to have a supportive family that can say, get up and move forward, it's going to be all right, So
it's not the end of the world.
Having a support system really helps you. You will fail, and you'll continue failing, and it's going to make you stronger, but it will hopefully make you continue going if you have the support behind you.
It's just a little setback, right?
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። ቢዝነስ ኤንድ ሊደርሺፕ የሚለውን ፓወር ፓነል እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደ ፕሮግራሙ ልሰዳችሁ።
Any missed failures that you want to share with us that you ever came?
Of course. And to Anna's point, you are going to fail in life. I mean, that's just, setbacks are imminent. Success is how you respond to it. So early in my management career, I was asked to build a team. I put together a team and I was very excited about putting a strong team. So I've decided to hire someone who left IBM. And unbeknownst to me, he was a toxic, he was a problem maker, but against HR recommendation, against my team's recommendation, because I know the guy, I know he's incredibly talented. So I went ahead and I hired him. I escalated and I got the permission to hire him. But that's against HR recommendation. And then a couple of years down the road, I found out that he was absolutely a disaster. Not only he was a disaster, I had to build my team all over again. So the lessons learned here is, first and foremost, do your homework, do your research, and second and most importantly, ensure that you respect HR's job or other careers' job. So it's, you can't do it all. And again, it shows that it was my first time management. It was my first management job, and I wanted to be successful. I wanted to break it, and so on and so forth. But that was a great lesson and something that resonated with me.
Okay. So next question. I think this is something that, you know, I've read about it quite a bit. I've thought about it quite a bit myself, and it's the imposter syndrome. Shelly Arbacho, who's a tech CEO, I don't know if you read her book. She wrote a book titled Unapologetically Ambitious. And in it, she talks about the imposter syndrome. Most high-level executives experience it at some point or another. So I wanted to ask if you ever felt like, in the position that you were in, that you were not good enough. Do I really deserve to be sitting at this seat? I know I've experienced it, but sometimes, you know, when we look at successful people, we just automatically assume, oh my gosh, they're confident. They're not going to struggle with any of these, you know, shortcomings or feeling like I don't really belong in that space. Have you ever felt that? And if not, or if you have, how do you overcome that? And I say we can start with you.
Any of us, I'll speak for all of us for a second and say any of us that say we haven't felt that would be lying. That's the fact of the matter. Look, anytime, especially when you're having a difficult challenge, or I've raised my hands multiple times to get a job and haven't got the promotion that I wanted, or I've been bypassed, you always start to second guess yourself and say, is it me? Is there something that I didn't do? Could I have done better, and so on and so forth. For me, that's absolutely healthy, because if you think you're entitled to it, the mentality is probably not right. How do you overcome it? I go back to what I said a little earlier. I try to fill my cup with things that are coming from me and the people that I trust and need their input. The world will tell you a lot about what's wrong with you. HR organizations in corporate America will tell you nothing more than what's wrong with you. That is their job. They seem to thrive in things like that. If you listen to that nonsense, all you're going to do is continue to try to build on skills that you actually don't even have. And so for me, the way to be able to overcome that, you marinate over it for a little bit. You try not to internalize it. You try to be able to get some inputs that you need, but you got to keep knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and whatever shortcomings you have. All of us have something like that. But it is not uncommon to be in a room and say, wow, I'm in a room full of, you know, high-powered people. But the one piece, you can take it from me, they all put on their pants one leg at a time. They all have two eyes, one nose, all those things. So at some point, you just overcome that and sit in the room and pull up your seat and start to contribute.
That's great. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and I'm going to ask Anna a question. What are some leadership challenges that are unique for a woman leader that you've experienced and that you want to share with us?
So thank you for that important question. I just wish we don't have to ask it.
Yeah, I agree.
hopefully at some point there will be a time when we don't have to ask these questions. But I think there's been a lot of progress. Obviously, we've seen a lot of change, but the journey is still long, and there's still a lot that needs to be done. I think, as a female who's been running my own company, working internationally, and also, as I was saying earlier on, my background in fashion, my background focusing on Africa, my background focusing on, something that's quite new and novel at the time, I've always felt that I have to try that much harder, And then obviously, the juggling act and making sure that you're perfect on the home front and that you're a good mother, a good wife, a good child at the same time running your businesses, and having to do that juggling act. And it's just, once again, comes back to having that support system. And if you have a support system that's there to support you and knowing that you can really achieve. I come from a family where, my mother, my parents are hardworking people, and I've never felt like, okay, as a woman, you're going to have to take this journey. Obviously, when I told my family that I wanted to become a fashion model, it was not, well, at the beginning, obviously, because it was not something that they knew a lot about, and they wanted to protect me, so they felt that it would be better if I'm pursuing a career that is normal, that I will have a normal job, and I will be secure and set for life. But I was never felt to feel like, okay, you're a female, so you can't reach anywhere. I mean, if you're working hard and you're committed, then there's nothing you cannot do. So it's important that I have a daughter, we have a daughter and a son, and we're always telling our daughter, don't ever feel like because you're a woman that you can't achieve what you can, whether you're living in Africa or anywhere else in the world. The most important thing is you've got to work hard, you've got to get the schooling done, you've got to put in the hours, you've got to commit yourself to whatever you're doing. And if it's driven by purpose, if it's driven by the commitment, it will pay off. It might not happen immediately, but it will pay off. So I haven't really felt that, obviously I've never worked for corporate America, I've always been self-employed, I've run my own companies, but obviously I've always tried to, I've been in positions or situations where being the only female, or being the only person with the background that I have, and then I'm trying to push an agenda which is maybe not really well perceived or maybe not taken seriously. So I've always felt like if I go prepared, if I know my work, and if I can really show success stories myself, then I can be taken seriously. So maybe this is what I'd like to share.
That's great. So last round of question, and I'm going to start with Menelik, then you, and then I'm going to go to Manasseh. What personal practice or habit have you developed to support your professional and personal growth?
The corporate world, if you let it, would pretty much kill you, right? So you need to have a very balanced life. For me, my weekdays are 12, sometimes 15 hours. My wife, my daughter will tell you, I take calls from Japan well into the evening, past 7, 8, 9 p.m. sometimes. I try very hard to spend as much time with the family, but I also try to find me time for myself.
What does me time for you look like?
Good question. So what I do is I actually do run marathons. I do 2 full marathons every year, 4 half marathons.
Jeez.
And you can't just do that overnight, as you can expect. It takes time. So every week, weekdays, at least I run a few miles. On Saturdays is my long run days. My wife, my daughter will tell you, Saturdays are locked. The morning is locked for me. That's all I do. I run 20 miles, 26 miles sometimes. So that's my Saturday. On Sundays, I do yoga. So running for the physical, yoga for the mind. And that's how I de-stress by Sunday evening so that I would have a fabulous week the following week. Sundays, I take some space away from my wife. She gives me some area in the kitchen. I do some cooking. And I love cooking. I love cooking some Ethiopian foods. I love cooking, of course, European dish. And all of that is just to take my mind away from the routine that sometimes will take a toll on your life. And I hope that I can continue to do that long enough.
Abi,
Yeah, thank you.
personal practice, professional practice.
So I'll mix it up a bit, personal and professional. So first of all, on the professional side, continuous learning. You know, there is Mahatma Gandhi said, you learn as if you live forever and you live as if you die tomorrow. So you have to continue. There is no substitute than continuous learning. Self-reflection is very important. You know, I take that seriously. And go back, assess your strengths and weakness, get feedback, understand where you are, and make the progress you're supposed to do. To me, time management, prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. And I would recommend Dwight Eisenhower's metrics about urgent versus important things. So you need to prioritize what are urgent, what's urgent, not everything is not important. So that would give you a perspective on how to run your business or how to do your daily task. Healthy lifestyle. And so to your point, Menelik, healthy lifestyle has been near and dear to me. I run about 3 miles a week. In fact, I took a challenge earlier this year, to be able to run and get ready to climb Kilimanjaro. And
send us a picture.
I do. So that was a big challenge for me because to me, it speaks about endurance. It speaks volume about ability to take challenge, and also being disciplined and hard work. So I did that earlier this year, and it was a very exhilarating experience, I tell you, a very good experience. And then finally, goal setting. You know, there is a saying, you plan the work and work the plan, as opposed to just jump into the work and try to do ad hoc thing. So I'm very committed about making sure that we have a plan for everything. So you plan the work, and then you work your plan. And then the last thing I like to advise everyone is, there are things you control in life, and there are things you cannot control in life. So you have to understand that, because you will not be able to solve everything in life. You will not be able to get to where you are, to where you want to be. So you need to understand and differentiate the things you control. And that's true, by the way, professional as well as business, as well as your personal life.
I agree, just like the microphone that I cannot control the AV, right? So last question, Manasseh, if you could tell me personal and professional habits that help you and support you grow professionally and also personally at home, with a takeaway advice for our audience.
There's been fantastic answers in terms of practices. All of us are doing it. The one thing I did in 2000 at the age of 50 was go back to school. So I did a program at Columbia Business School. And so you're never too old to learn, but through podcasts, through ebooks, all sorts of stuff, consuming as much as you can would be one thing. Like these gentlemen, and I'm sure like Anna, some level of exercise and some level of decompression. For me, the family piece is actually, I'll say this because I think sometimes, the woman is supposed to take care of the kids or this, that, the other. I was born to be a father. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So lots of you women will say, I was born to be a mother. I was born to be a father. My friends will know that I've wanted to be a father ever since they've known me. So it's an enjoyable task for me, all right? But the piece I'd say for folks, especially younger folks, all right? I talked to you about courage. We have to do it consistently. You can't do it every now and again. You can't be courageous now and be weak later. But the other piece, the most important piece for me, is the character, right? You have certain principles and values that are important to you, right? The minute you start to diverge on those, everything goes wrong, right? I spent 24 years at Pfizer. In the business that I was in, I was spun out and given a much bigger responsibility, managing a $3 billion business. I spent 2 years at that organization making a lot of money. As my wife will attest, at that point we were having a conversation within a year. What were we having a conversation about? What have I talked to you about this entire time? Not about how to do Excel, or if you're an engineer, how to do math, or if you're a doctor, how to do science. I'm talking to you about who you are. Because the minute you lose that, it's all gone. I raised my hands and I left this organization. Why did I do that? In crude words, they're a bunch of bums. In realistic words, they're not as intelligent as I am, and they're gonna monkey see, monkey do. I'm gonna become a monkey along with a bunch of clowns. And so if the organization does not fit who you are, right, there are plenty of other places to go get a job. Right? But who you are cannot be replaced. So the courage, the character, but to do it consistently. So if you heard one thing from me, that would be it. And that's exactly the way I live my life. I'm not an angel, I'm not perfect, but that to me is a formula for success for anybody that's starting their career.
What a way to end a conversation, right? Thank you so much, everybody. I wish I could continue to have this conversation, but you know, time is of the essence. I really appreciate you for sharing your journey with all of us, and I know we all have takeaways. Right, so thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
A round of applause to our speakers.
Thank you.
እንግዲህ ተመልካቾቻችን በዛሬ ዝግጅት ጠቃሚ ሐሳቦችን እንዳገኛችሁ በመተማመን በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት ደግሞ የመጨረሻውን ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን the future of tech የሚለውን ይዘንላችሁ እንቀርባለን። እንግዲህ ከወዲሁ ደግሞ በጣም ትልቁ ደስ የሚለው የምስራቻችን ኤምፓወር አዲስ ወደ ኢትዮጵያ ይዘንላችሁ ኖቬምበር 15 እና 16 በሚሌኒየም ሆል እንመጣለን። እንግዲህ ስለዚህ ዝግጅት በሚቀጥሉት ሳምንታት በደንብ እንነግራችኋለን። in the meantime ምርትና አገልግሎታችሁን ማስተዋወቅ ለምትፈልጉ ስፖንሰር ማድረግ ለምትፈልጉ ከኛ ጋር ፓርትነር ማድረግ ለምትፈልጉ info@empowercw.com ብላችሁ ኢሜል ብታደርጉልን አስፈላጊውን ኢንፎርሜሽን ልንልክላችሁ እንችላለን ማለት ነው። እንግዲህ በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት በሌላው ፕሮግራማችን እስከምንገናኝ ደህና ቆዩልን።